I said that I would talk about the preliminaries. And in general, if you're familiar with Tibetan Buddhism, you'll probably think that involves doing 100,000 prostrations, etc. In the Theravadan tradition, then the basic preliminary to all practice is to give rise to renunciation. And so they meditate on things like the 36 impure substances of the body and the unsatisfactory nature of samsara. Now, this is more in line with the true meaning of preliminary. A preliminary is there for you to give rise to a correct outlook before you begin practice, because without this outlook, it is not possible to give rise to the results of the practice. And it is the case that in general, Westerners think that the high practices are more important than these preliminary practices. They see them to be lesser and of less significance. But in reality, without a firm foundation in your preliminaries, then you can't go on to practice the higher dharmas. So we tend to value things like Mahamudra and Dzogchen. And you can see this very clearly, because for the most part, people who are teaching online, they start off with the highest view. And then using that high view, they work backwards. So for example, they will say things like, everything is non-dual, or there is no self, and then begin their practice in that way, but that is mistaken. I mean, I mentioned in the previous video how my own teacher, somebody who understands meditation, not only does he understand meditation, but people come from far and wide to learn the instructions on mind, which is the basis of practicing Mahamudra. Now, he frequently says that the problem isn't that he doesn't understand meditation. The problem is that he hasn't generated this understanding of the preliminaries, and because of that, he doesn't have diligence. So there are the activities of doing 100,000 prostrations, 100,000 mandalas, etc. But at the very beginning of that, there are these four thoughts, the four thoughts that turn the mind from samsara. Now, often you will hear Westerners say that they have done the preliminaries 4 or 5 or 6 times. But if you look into it, then they don't actually have this attitude. And this attitude is what is generated at the very beginning of the practice. And the first of those four thoughts is the precious human existence. Now, in the precious human existence, there are the 8 freedoms and the 10 advantages. And so the very first of these 8 freedoms is recognizing that one hasn't been born in the lower realms, specifically in hell. So as you can see, if somebody doesn't have a belief in hell, or if they don't have a belief that they can be born in other realms, for example, be reincarnated, also if they don't believe in karma cause and effect, then it's not possible to give rise to the correct mindset. So does that mean that you cannot practice this precious human existence if you don't have a belief in rebirth and karma cause and effect? No, there is an avenue that you can take. So you may not believe that you can be born in hell, but there is a way you can practice. For example, you could believe that if I was born as a worm, then there would be no way for me to engage in a spiritual practice. And that's whether it's Buddhist practice or Hindu practice or anything, because they just don't have the intelligence. And further, it may be that you don't even believe that you can be reborn as an animal. But you still have a way you can practice this first point, the precious human existence. Because you can recognize, if I was cognitively and physically challenged to the degree where I couldn't really think or concentrate, and my body was too ill to engage in any kind of practice, then I wouldn't have a chance. And so we have to sort of rejoice in the fact that we have been born with the right tools in order to engage in a spiritual practice. Now, ultimately, this meditation on the precious human birth does require a belief in past and future lives and karma cause and effect, and specifically that we can be born in any of the 6 realms. Now, what will a proper meditation or contemplation on the precious human existence bring? Well, it will make you diligent. You won't waste your time. You'll recognize that I've only got one shot, and I have to use this life for something positive. And that applies to a spiritual practice, but that can also apply to just your activities within your community. For example, well, my neighbor is very sick, but I am relatively healthy, and I can help them. I can use this human life to benefit others. So it's very useful for Dharma practice, but also just for community work and for being a good citizen in your nation. So as I said, having a good practice of the precious human existence will make you diligent. And you won't waste your time. You'll use this advantage, you'll use this opportunity that you have to benefit yourself and others. Now, the second of these contemplations is the contemplation on death and impermanence. And this is something that Westerners are more familiar with. We often tell ourselves, well, don't get attached to that because it won't last. But there are other advantages to this, because a good contemplation on impermanence leads to experiences of emptiness. So these genuine or authentic experiences of emptiness arise out of a good meditation or contemplation on impermanence. Also, if you meditate well on impermanence and death, then it will stop you from clinging to the appearances of this life. Not only will it stop you from clinging to the appearances of this life, but you will apply yourself for either the moment of death, or if you believe in future lives, you will apply yourself to activities that will benefit your next life. Again, if you're just practicing the preliminaries to help you with your community work, then you will no longer cling to your life, and you will be more able to benefit others and help others. The third of these contemplations is contemplation on the unsatisfactory nature of samsara, so the faults of samsara. Now, many Westerners don't like meditating on this. They don't like meditating on suffering. You hear people say things like, well, I'm already depressed, so why do I want to meditate on suffering? But meditating on the suffering of samsara is taught to be a remedy to clinging to future lives. So if you believe in reincarnation, and then you will believe that you can be born in any of the 6 realms of samsara, either in hell, or as a ghost, or as an animal, or possibly even as a god. But it teaches in the Buddha Dharma that even if we're born as a god, we are still trapped within this cyclic existence of samsara. And that means eventually we will fall back down into the lower realms, and no matter how well we've got it, then things won't last. And so it stops one from clinging to other existences. So how does somebody practice with this if they don't even believe in other existences? Well, it's simple. We often aspire to be like those who are very rich. We may see somebody like Elon Musk. We see that he's the richest man in the world, and we kind of resent the fact that we aren't rich, or we aspire to be like them, or we give rise to jealousy. Now, if you have a good contemplation on the unsatisfactory nature of samsara, then you will no longer be jealous of people who are rich and famous, because you will recognize that they too experience suffering. In fact, it could be said that many rich and powerful people are far more neurotic and unhappy than we are. It seems that no matter how rich you are, you always want something else. For example, Elon Musk is the richest man in the world, but he's still searching for something that other people don't have. And because he can buy anything that exists on this planet, he is now looking to go to Mars to fulfill his desire. But somebody who contemplates well on the unsatisfactory nature of samsara, or this world you can say, they won't aspire towards wealth and power. Instead, they can aspire towards being of help to others, because what really matters is how we benefit ourselves and others and make the world a better place. So what is this final or fourth meditation of the 4 thoughts that turn the mind from samsara? Well, that is a contemplation of karma, cause and effect. Now you might ask yourself, if I don't believe in rebirth, and I don't believe in karma, cause and effect, then how can this meditation benefit me? Well, simply put, a belief in karma is a belief that things arise from causes. And furthermore, if one engages in negative activities, it leads to negative results. So even without believing in future lives, or that I can be reborn in hell, for example, I could have a belief that if I do something bad, then that will come back on me. And it's something that we have a kind of innate belief in. For example, if someone gives rise to a negative thought, and then they bump their head on a tree, they often feel like those 2 events are somehow connected. So we have a natural belief in this process, that this negative thought, or doing something bad, will lead to a negative result. For Christians, they believe that they are being punished by God. But the meaning in the Dharma is not this. You're not being punished by the Buddha for doing something bad. In the Dharma, it means that negative causes lead to negative results. There's a causal link between actions of one type and the results of the same type. Now, if you don't believe in this causal link, for example, you believe that the universe was formed randomly. You believe that there's something called the uncertainty principle. It's quantum uncertainty, and based on that, things happen randomly. So in that kind of world, there can be no kind of karma-cause relationship. Many people see this idea that there's a causal link between actions and results to be a kind of mystical and unscientific belief. And so if you don't believe in karma, you can still contemplate on this topic. One can see very clearly, if I am a good contributor to my community, I help people, then that will make their lives better. And so my positive actions will lead to positive results. And likewise, if I go around robbing my neighbors, then it will cause animosity. And so this contemplation will benefit even those who don't believe in karma, cause and effect and past and future lives, because it will make their actions very wholesome. They won't want to engage in negativities. And if more people in the world only practice virtue and do not engage in negativities, then the world will be a better place, right? Now, what are the benefits for somebody who does have a belief in karma, cause and effect in past and future lives? Well, similarly, they will only engage in virtue and they will avoid all non-virtue. But also, they will come to a belief that ultimately virtuous acts lead to liberation and emancipation from suffering, to final happiness, which is called the state of Buddhahood. My purpose in giving this talk is that you may be able to apply yourself to this contemplation. And based on applying yourself to this contemplation, I hope that you will gain some realization of the meaning that lies within these words. This should improve your life, either in worldly terms or ultimately along your spiritual path. Thank you for your time. See you later.